It seems like if you look around today, around the people around you, your community, people online, just in general, it seems like more and more people today are feeling this sense of disconnection with modern life. For a lot of people, there's this feeling that something's just like off or different, or no matter how connected we all are via social media, how much information we have, how advanced technology is, and how quote unquote better things are on the outside, it still just feels like there's this disconnection for a lot of people. Maybe this comes in the form of just feeling like you just don't resonate with the way that people or society are telling you how to live your life. You know, the careers that we pursue, the people that we're surrounded by, just the way things are. And most of us are so caught up in this survival loop that nobody ever really stops to question that feeling or why it even happens. But if you had some time to just press pause on your life right now and all the responsibilities you have and the bills and family stuff and just everything, the things that you're supposed to be doing, quote unquote, you'll notice something. You'll basically notice what I just said, that feeling of just, why do we do the things that we do? You know, why do we work these jobs, these careers? Why do we have these lifestyles that seemingly bring so many people so many different problems, right? I mean, sure, you ask somebody on the street if they like their job, maybe they'll say yes, but if they had, you know, I'm sure that thing isn't what they dreamt of doing when they were young. You know, I'm sure that working a construction job or a corporate job or office job or being an accountant isn't, you know, what somebody actually wants to spend their time doing. It's just, we have to, right? And that's what I'm talking about. Most people never get that moment of pause to just look at society and look at everything and question it. And that's what I want to take the opportunity to do here and explore that idea for a bit. Here's the thing, you know, this way of life, this modern way of life is so normalized to us because it's all we've ever known. And the problem is that, you know, how many of us actually chose the lives that we're living? And the unfortunate answer is not that many. You know, not that many people are actually very conscious of how they build their lives or what they spend their time doing. It's just, you kind of get lost in the motions and you end up somewhere and you just end up staying there for the rest of your life and making the best of it. The problem is that since we were literally kids, we were influenced and told what to think, how to think, who to be, who not to be, to the point where most people don't even really know who they actually are outside of this construct. You know, you take their job away from them, you take just this modern lifestyle away, and you put them somewhere else, and they have no idea who they even are or what they like, or, you know, what they even want to spend their time doing. Since we're kids, we have all these pressures on us that literally shape us into who we are, right? Pressures to conform, putting this mask on in order to be accepted, not saying certain things or not being fully honest, or showing the world just a version of you that isn't actually real. It's just a version of you that, you know, is easily accepted in society. You know, we're told to like not be difficult, not ask questions, to just get in line and do what everybody else is doing because that's just the way everything has always been. And the thing is, the system, society needs people like this in order to function, right? Because it has roles that it needs to be filled. It needs obedient workers, not to get all like negative, but like it needs people who are willing to participate in the system for it to keep functioning. But that system doesn't care about you, it doesn't care about your needs, it doesn't care about your health, it doesn't care about what's best for you. You know, it doesn't care that you're struggling to pay your bills or put food on the table. It doesn't care that you're just barely keeping your head above water. All it cares is that you show up to work every day so that they could get their job done. And at what point do we sit down and question, you know, are things, how much longer are we going to keep doing things that don't actually serve us, and how could we create something better? Something that makes more sense for modern times, for 2026, with all the technology we have. it seems kind of obvious to me that, let me just make sure I'm still recording. Yep. It seems kind of obvious to me that in 2026, with all the technology and everything, all the success that we've had, that people are still working these jobs that are making them miserable and sick, and they still can't even pay their bills, And you have a rising homeless population, you have a meaning crisis, you have an isolation crisis, you have all these different things that it almost doesn't make sense as to why we have all these problems if technology just keeps improving and the economy keeps growing and so on and so forth. And I'm not saying that, everybody who works a regular job is miserable and has all these issues, because that's not true. There's a lot of people who do enjoy this lifestyle and do enjoy modern life and do feel like they have a good life, and that's fine. But I guess the question I want to ask is, like, how much of our lives, of our personality, of our opinions, of even, the things we enjoy and our interests and passions, how much of that is actually ours? How much of that have we chose to pursue, and how much of it has been programmed, into us by society? How much has society shaped who we actually are without even really realizing it? And, that leads to the question of, who are you actually? If you take all that stuff away, as well as what are the costs associated with that, And I know there's going to be a type of person who watches this video and just says, listen, like, people have to pay their bills, like, why are you even questioning this stuff? Why do you even care? What are you thinking? Why are you thinking about all this stuff? Like, and they're just going to do exactly what I was just saying and just tell me to be quiet, get in line, be like everybody else, not question anything. But the truth is that there are very real costs associated with conforming and not being who you're truly supposed to be. And the thing is, you might not even realize how much, of your life has been influenced by external factors. I mean, like I said, a lot of this stuff has just become normalized. Not only are we not encouraged to question these things and to maybe even choose a different path in life that is not traditional, but there's, our biology is actually wired not to question these things. Evolutionarily, one of the biggest ways that people survive for thousands of years is by fitting into whatever tribe you're in, right? Getting rejected or getting outcasted by the tribe and going to do your own thing literally meant, for thousands of years, literally meant that you would probably face death. We couldn't survive for all these years if we went against the grain, if we didn't, accept the traditional way of life. And so a lot of these patterns are still running in us today, and you see that everywhere you look. You see people who are scared to be themselves, scared to speak their opinion, scared to speak their mind, because we do face the very real threat of being outcasted or judged or tossed to the side. And our brains tell us when that happens that we go into like fight or flight, because evolutionarily that means that we're gonna die. And so I'm gonna get into some actual stuff in a second here that kind of shows you that these influences and that society and the media and schools and your parents and all this stuff, all these pressures that are put on you have shaped who you are, and they're a lot more powerful than we realize. Powerful enough to lead us into a life that we don't even want to be living, even though we're in 2026 and there are so many alternatives. And I think this is what a lot of people are experiencing today when I'm talking about feeling disconnected or feeling unfulfilled or feeling like this modern life just doesn't give us what we need to be fully fulfilled, because people have been pushed into these paths that they didn't even really choose. It's just, like I said, they were pushed there because of survival. These rules or forces literally guide us our entire lives, not only in the career we choose, but in how we express ourselves and what we wear, in the friends and the people that we keep around us, in the interests and passions and hobbies that we're into, obviously the career, the relationships we get into, literally our entire lives. A lot of what we call our personality isn't even, especially with social media today, isn't even necessarily our personality. It's just these adaptations that we kind of developed in order to survive in our community, in society. How many people are into the things that they're into, or do the things, choose the careers that they do as a result of what other people might be thinking about them. And it might not even be a conscious thought, it might just be subconscious, and that's the point, right? A lot of these things are subconscious, and how much of our lives are dictated by these subconscious patterns that are secretly running in the background, and what can we do about it? I would say the vast majority, at least in the Western world, of people are literally like these performative versions of themselves that aren't even actually them. They have these specific sets of opinions that align with whatever, ideology that resonates with them. They're not even their own opinions, they're just opinions of their party or their group. How many people are afraid to speak their mind and speak how they truly feel about something, and then end up in a life, in a relationship, in a group of friends, sticking around toxic people or communities, or goes to a job they hate because that's what other people want for them and not themselves. People live their entire lives to avoid rejection or avoid confrontation. And while they may accomplish that goal, it's like, who are you? Who are you really? Like, they end up in this version of life where they're not even really themselves. They're just this blob that has been shaped by fear, essentially. There's a very real thing where it's like, people almost exist for the version of themselves that they present to other people. And if you live that way long enough, you literally end up like a caricature of your own self, like a shell of yourself. This version of you that exists in other people's minds, or that you want to exist in other people's minds, but that isn't actually you. And as a result, we have a society of people who feel disconnected, who feel unseen, who feel lonely even when they're surrounded by people, who feel like they can't connect to anybody, who feel like they're unfulfilled, and no matter what they do, they'll go pursue these careers and make this good salaries and drive a new car, but that doesn't fill whatever's inside. That doesn't make them feel anything. They still feel empty, and it's exactly because of what I'm talking about. Me personally, I've always kind of taken my own path in life. I've never really done the traditional thing. I dropped out of school, even, when family members advised against it. I started my own online business when I was like 19, and looking back, like, I was just like such a naive 19-year-old, so like focused on just doing what I wanted to do that I didn't really care about what anybody else thought. But looking back, like I was pretty crazy, like, and I never really conformed to the crowd, and that came with a lot of challenges that I had to face later on, and this is kind of how I even got to this point where I'm making this video. And as a result, like, when I was younger, I was fulfilled. I was pursuing something that I cared about, and I realized as the years went on, like, not actually most people don't. And that's when I started seeing this contrast, because when you're younger, when you're like 17, 18, 19, and you go out and you do something unconventional, it's kind of like your peers look at you like it's kind of like cool, because nobody's really doing anything at that age. People are just going to school, they're working these part-time jobs. But eventually, as people start growing up and going into these, traditional careers, and they start getting salary jobs and, start moving out and living on their own and having these bills, and then they get into like a relationship and they get married, you start to see the contrast, right? Somewhere around that time, I kind of started moving away from being as risk averse and being, you know, as willing to take the risky path. And I saw my peers kind of have these more stable lives, and I started questioning myself more. And for a few years there, I started letting that contrast kind of dictate my life, and I would take less risks and I would play it more safe. And that was a mistake. And it's a hard feeling, to describe, but it's literally like a survival mechanism that kicks in your brain and starts creating this fear in you. And this fear is what most people's lives are dictated from. And nobody wants to, take the lonely road or like do things by themselves. People, especially when you're young, you want to fit into the crowd. You want to have a lot of friends. You want to, fit in. And that causes you to be agreeable. It causes you to maybe change some of your opinions that you don't actually have in order to agree with the tribe. It causes you to do things that the tribe considers cool or the tribe considers, smart. And slowly, if you listen to that fear, you become this version of yourself that, again, it's just a reflection of like what other people want from you, and it's not even you. And no matter which way you go, whether you play it safe or you take your own path in life, there are prices and costs associated with either one, right? So for example, you take the safe path, you're much more likely to, always have a roof over your head and your bills are paid, and you probably don't cause too much friction in your own life, and you probably, fit well into different crowds, whether that's like your coworkers or your friend group or whatever. The costs associated with that, though, is if that's not truly what you want to be doing and who you are, you're always going to feel this sense of disconnection. Whereas if you take the other path and you kind of go after your dreams, or you like try to build this authentic life for yourself, there's a lot of risks associated with that, right? Maybe you're not going to be as stable financially. Maybe you're not going to fit in with your childhood friend group anymore, which means you might have to spend some time, alone or trying to find a new group of people, which isn't always fun, Maybe you go through some hardships where you don't even know, where you're going to sleep, or you can't afford an apartment, or you don't have this stable life that everybody else around you seems to have. But the upside is that you can potentially build a life that's truly your own. And not only that, there is unlimited financial upside as well, right? If you do take your own path, you're not stuck in these capped jobs where you could only make 60, 70K a year. You could build something that has unlimited upside. But again, the risks are often a lot greater. And as I started like getting older and, see like the direction a lot of my friends went in, you start to see people who went both ways, in both extremes, right? Like I've definitely seen people who have let fear dictate their entire lives to the point where they grew up and they got jobs that they hated, and that you grow up with some people and they're this specific type of person, and you maybe have a vision of what they would do in the future, and you see these people grow up and then they choose something that is completely left field of what you would expect of them, and they probably don't even like it, but they chose that stability, that safe career path. And you see these people kind of grow up and then they have other issues because of that, right? They're unfulfilled, so then they escape with addictions. Maybe that's food, maybe that's substances. And you see people maybe have this stability, but they're unhealthy, they're unfulfilled, etc., etc. You could extrapolate that all across different areas of life, whether that's getting into a relationship with somebody. A lot of people get into relationships not because they actually like the person they're with, it's just because they don't want to be alone. And so we have all these different forces that are like these subconscious forces that literally dictate our lives and how happy we end up, where we end up, you know, and just in general, all across life, like what we end up doing in life. And I guess the point of me even making this video is just to kind of question that for a second. Like, how much of your life is something that you chose because you wanted to do that because that's who you are, versus something that you were pushed into because you were scared? And I think that's a question that's worth asking. And I think that's why we have such, this problem in society where so many people are escaping, so many people are unfulfilled and disconnected, because we were told how to live instead of choosing how to live. And at a certain point in life, you have to make that decision. Are you going to play it safe and perhaps, deal with the consequences of that? Or are you going to take a risk and try to build a life that's actually your own, And I know the answer for me. I'd rather do my own thing and take my own path, even if it means I end up homeless, even if it means the worst possible thing that could happen, because that's just who I am. I can't do something that I don't like doing. But that choice isn't always as clear for everybody else. I mean, the reality is, are you even your own person if you're scared to truly be yourself? And that means choosing a career that you actually want to pursue, or that means being in a relationship with a person you actually want to be with, instead of just taking the first thing that comes to you in order to just be safe. How much of you is actually you by the time you grow up versus a packaged program belief system that society handed to you? And again, it's not always easy to take your own path, because you do face that fear of rejection, right? But at the end of the day, the realest people that you know in your life right now, I mean, who are they? They're not people who are just, yes men, who are just going to be super agreeable and who always take the safe route. They're the people who are unapologetically themselves, right? Even if it means, pissing off a group of people that may not agree with the things that they're into. Even if that means, risking other people not liking you or not fitting in. It's like, if you're going to take your own path and be your own person in this life, you're going to be polarizing. There's going to be people who don't like you. There's going to be people who love you. But you have to be okay with yourself. And that's what I think drives most people. Most people aren't okay kind of with themselves, right? They're driven by fear because they need other people's approval in order to feel okay. But if you want any type of freedom, you have to be willing to let all that stuff go and disappoint people, The cost of living an authentic life is disappointing everyone else. But the upside with that is that you also attract the right people into your life, right? Instead of just attracting yes men and agreeable people, you attract people who actually care about you and who you could actually connect deeper with, instead of being in a crowd and still feeling alone, right? And there's actually been a lot of studies around this stuff. And modern media, modern politics, modern advertising has all been designed around this. These companies, and they know this stuff. They know how susceptible we are to conforming, or to that feeling of needing to belong and needing to be part of a tribe, to the point where that's literally what all the media is based on, what politics is based on. And it doesn't matter what side of politics you're on, whether it's the left or the right, both of them use these tactics of appealing to your subconscious mind. The left pushes these virtue-based messaging, things like climate change, immigration, morality, because people see that stuff and then they think oh, if I disagree with this, I'm a bad person, or if I agree with this, then I'm a good person. And so they identify these traits, and they make you literally feel bad for not voting for them, right? And it's that same thing, that social kind of outcasting. And if you have an opinion that's perhaps on the right, then they, again, do this, they outcast you. Same thing on the right, though, right? Both parties do this, right? Left wing, right wing, same bird. And it's extremely effective, to the point where we literally have like a hostile political climate right now, to where people are willing to harm each other if they're on the other side of the political spectrum. And so that's how powerful this stuff is, right? I'm not even going to get into politics, but that's just an example. And there's been many studies around this stuff, right? Studies have shown that people are significantly more likely to conform when their belonging is at risk. In one study, around 60% of young adults say that they have made decisions, what to buy, where to go, what to post, what to wear, what to even like, based on what they see other people doing online. In the 50s, in one study, 75% of people in the study conformed to a false data point that was obviously false, like common sense false. Even that, when they knew it was the wrong answer, just because it was backed up by the group of people that they were in. So 60% or 75% of people who knew something was wrong said it was right because they didn't want to be rejected by the tribe. I mean, that's powerful. People will literally do almost anything to avoid being called out by the group that they're in, to just fit in, even if it means giving an obviously wrong answer or belief because the people around you believe it. So that makes you question, like, what is actually true? Is what's true objective truth, or is it what the people around you think is true? And so you could see how much, from being a little kid to growing up, how much we're probably influenced and guided based on, what the people around us think and what our parents think and what society thinks. And that's why so few people, chase their dreams or do something that's risky, because it literally is an evolutionary risk in your brain telling you that if you do this, you could die. And so a lot of people don't. A lot of people live these lives that they actually hate just to fit in. And it's 2026, it's getting to a point where if there's ever a time to reclaim that authenticity as people, and that freedom that's out there, it's now, it's now or never. And so this creates a very split version of the world, right? We have the version of the world, or the group of people in the population who build their lives to survive within the tribe, the programmed self. And on the other hand, we have the version of people who emerges when they start questioning reality and start questioning these rules and start adjusting their lives to do things that are actually made for them and not for society. And as a result, those people end up building things that are helpful for society, I mean, you think about all the artists, the musicians, the entrepreneurs that make the world a better place. None of these people would exist, and the effects of their art and their businesses and inventions never would affect the world if they conformed to the tribe and just did what everybody else said they did, right? And not to say that there's a perfect answer for everybody. I'm not saying that there's one answer at all. Different types of people fit into different camps, right? All I'm doing is kind of questioning this and maybe bringing it up in your own life so you could question it. And the truth is that there's real consequences and prices for both. There's people who took the safe route who end up miserable and lonely and depressed. There's also people who take the safe route who end up happy. There's people who take, the alternative path or take their own path who fail miserably and literally don't make it. But then there's also the types of people who do make it and who are very successful and who change the world and everything in between, right? So there's no one answer. I'm not saying that there's one thing that's better than the other. All I'm saying is to question it within yourself. If you do feel this way, and it's worth questioning, it's worth bringing up this conversation and creating some awareness around it. I mean, just some like silly little example I'm thinking of right now is I subscribe to a lot of people on YouTube recently. I've been watching a lot of videos about these people who live these more outdoor lifestyles. People who travel and backpack, and even people who are like legitimately like homeless. Like I watched this one guy, Nomad Sam. He's a guy from the UK, and he's literally homeless by choice, but not like on the streets homeless. He he has a dog. He has a German Shepherd that he brings everywhere with him. He has like his own tent, and he has his own gear set up, and he basically goes from place to place in these forests or in the outdoors or on public land, and he chooses to live a life without, not living in an apartment, not buying a house. He has no bills, and he makes videos on YouTube to support himself. And yeah, he doesn't have all the comforts and luxuries of modern life. He doesn't have AC. He doesn't have, a shower. But he also doesn't work a job that he hates. He also doesn't work 40, 50, 60 hours a week doing something that he doesn't want to do. And so a lot of people would look at that and say that guy's crazy, but I personally respect that because, yeah, he's willing to look crazy in the eyes of everybody else in order to live an authentic life. And that's kind of the perfect example of this video. It's like, what are you willing to do in order to truly be free, in order to truly be happy in this life? Are you willing to go against the tribe, society, people's opinions? Are you willing to disappoint people? Are you willing to be judged in order to live in truth? Or are you going to sacrifice your own truth to fit in with everybody else? And that's kind of the main theme that I just wanted to ask in this video and bring up. And it's a very interesting topic to me because it's something that, like I said, I dropped out of school when I was 19, and ever since then I've been on this path, right? Creating my own path and creating my own way of life. Even when it went against, family members' guidance, even when I had family members looking at me like I was crazy, or friends or whatever, even when I didn't fit in with a lot of the people that I grew up with, or because I took this path and they all took the 9-to-5 path, right? And so it's something that's been a very common theme in my life and something that I wanted to share with you guys. But at the end of the day, you could spend your entire life living for other people, but at the end of it all, you'll realize that as much as you think they care about you, they don't really care about you. If something happens to you, how many people are really going to be there? And at the end of this life, like, the only person that you have to be okay with is the person you look at when you're looking in the mirror. None of them are going to be there. None of them care. None of their approval or judgment matters. At the end of the day, it's just you. And if you could overcome, other people's judgment, fear of judgment, be okay with disappointing people, even if they're people that matter to you, and you're willing to chase something or pursue something or live a certain way that makes you happy, like, that's really all that matters. And even if you do go the safe route and you people please your way into a life where everybody agrees with what you do, but you don't, it's like, yeah, you might be safe on the outside materially, but can you even really be the person you're supposed to be for those people if you're not truly happy within yourself? And the answer is no. And so you got to do what you got to do for you, and whatever that means. And so if you kind of resonate with some of the stuff that I've talked about, and maybe you feel a bit disconnected, or you feel a bit empty or unfulfilled, maybe some of this stuff is worth questioning in your own life. Like, something I wrote down the other day is like a good thought experiment to do around this topic is, especially around your career, is like, let's say hypothetically speaking, tomorrow you were blacklisted from the job you work, from the industry that you're in, and from every 9-to-5 job that you could get. Let's say for whatever reason you just couldn't work a 9-to-5 job again, whether it's whatever reason that is, like, you're just blacklisted. What is it that you would spend your time doing? And try to think of this not as something that's like pleasurable, like, sometimes we think we want to just go lay on the beach and do nothing all day, but if there was something like you would spend the rest of your life doing, or the next year, 5 years doing, like, what would that be? And that kind of gets your mind thinking of like what you should actually be doing, or what you actually do want to be doing, if this, loop that we're in didn't exist. And so yeah, maybe it's worth asking yourself that question. And again, if you do feel this way, if you do feel like you are unfulfilled or feel disconnected or feel like something's off, maybe it's not actually you. Maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe you're actually right to feel the way that you do. Maybe you just need to start allowing yourself to actually be yourself for once in your life. And I'm going to leave the video off with that. So yeah, not sure what you guys think about that, but if you resonate or if you agree, disagree, have any opinions, leave them in the comments below. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting discussion. So peace.